Welcome to the Smart Weight Loss Coaching Podcast. I'm Dr. Lisa Olson, a board-certified weight loss medicine specialist and certified life coach. In this podcast, I'll share fresh insights and effective techniques for incorporating mindset, habit change, and proven science into your life. Are you ready to achieve sustainable weight loss, wellness, and longevity? Then let's jump in and lose weight the smart way. Welcome back. Recently, one of my clients, let's call her Vanessa, told me she struggles with getting hangry. Not angry, but rather hangry, which means hungry plus angry. She had a frustrating day at her job due to a colleague who took credit for some of her work. My client had been working long hours, and this week she hadn't taken time for lunch at all. By the time she got home, she was not just hungry, but also incredibly cranky, snippy, and impatient. Clearly, she was hangry. She snapped at her husband and then felt guilty about it. When she did finally get to eat dinner, she told me she ate way too much, way too fast, and ate food that was quick and convenient, but not especially healthy. So despite skipping meals, she didn't have any good news to share about her weight. I suspect the feeling of being hangry is familiar to all of us. I know it's familiar to me. Have you ever found yourself irritable when you're feeling extra hungry? It turns out that researchers have studied this phenomena. One of the studies puts participants in slightly annoying situations, like experiencing a computer glitch and having to start a tedious task over. Participants who hadn't eaten and were hungry were overtly irritated. Later, when they gave these folks an evaluation form regarding the research assistant's performance, they were much more likely to give negative feedback, saying that the research assistant had been judgmental toward them. This and other similar experiments suggest that hunger dials up our anger in the face of a frustrating experience. That makes sense, right? The brain's always monitoring the body to make sure we're in homeostasis, meaning that things are stable. If you're not, it sends a signal to the body telling you what to do to solve the dysregulation. That shift out of homeostasis into a state of hunger is experienced as negative, triggering the release of hormones like cortisol, which can create a fight or flight response. Basically, your brain is sending a signal to your body that something's not right and needs to be figured out. The greater the hunger, the greater the relentless drive to get food. Here's the thing. Glucose, or blood sugar, is low when people are hungry. The brain requires glucose and doesn't function properly when levels are low. When you have low glucose levels, that means your higher brain functions aren't working as well as they should, which is a problem because we rely on those higher brain functions to help us manage our emotions and calm our primitive responses. Suddenly, our lower brain is in charge, and we're acting barely more gracious than a pack of hungry hyenas. In other words, drop the glucose low due to hunger, sprinkle a frustrating day on top of it, and we're vulnerable to start behaving like a hungry toddler having a tantrum. What does an adult tantrum look like? We all know it looks like hunger plus anger. We get short-tempered, cranky, impatient. Hunger alone typically doesn't cause this kind of attitude or behavior. It's hunger in the face of frustration that drives it. Hunger causes shifts in hormones comparable to what we see in anger, but also with fear or even sadness. So when you add frustration on top of hunger, any kind of negative emotion is going to be amplified. We lose our ability to self-regulate when our glucose levels are low. In fact, one study showed that people were more verbally aggressive toward their spouses when their glucose level dropped. I believe it. I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of a hangry spouse's tirade, nor would I ever want to be that hangry spouse. Hard pass. Which is why we're not just here to define hangry. We want to figure out how to avoid it or interrupt it. One way to dial down those hangry moments is simply to raise your awareness. If you can, create a pause long enough to ask yourself, what's going on here? Is it possible I'm hungry? You may be able to diffuse the irritability you're experiencing by recognizing the impact of hunger on top of an already frustrating day. If possible, choose something that can be broken down to create energy quickly, but that won't put you in a cycle of spiking and then plummeting sugar levels. In other words, a piece of fruit or a handful of nuts is a better choice than some chips or candy because ultra-processed foods eventually make us hungrier. We don't want rebound hanger, right? Here's something to consider. We don't want to develop a fear of hunger just because we tend to get hangry. When I weighed 40 pounds more than I do today, many years ago, that was partially due to eating in advance to avoid getting hungry. When I was in my medical training and my hours were long, often there was no time to eat. So I kept snacks in my white coat pockets and I ate whenever I had a moment, knowing I might not have time for lunch or even dinner. Working in the hospital as a resident, there were times when meal service in the cafeteria was closed for the night before we'd get a break to grab food. So I honestly became a little afraid of hunger, which seems so silly now. It turns out that snacking all day to avoid hunger, or hanger, is a recipe for weight gain. Because sometimes I snacked a lot and would get a break to grab dinner after all. Had I not snacked throughout the day to avoid the possibility of hunger, I could have eaten a lot less snack food. I get it. Sometimes we know we have to miss a meal, and so grabbing a snack makes sense. But we don't need to have a mid-morning, mid-afternoon, or after-dinner snack as a regular part of our routine. We certainly don't need to graze all day long or to eat snacks in lieu of meals, which I sometimes see people do in my program. It's hard to maintain, much less lose weight when you're snacking. If you must snack to avoid getting hangry, let's say because it's going to be many hours between lunch and dinner, plan for that snack and make it count. Make it something healthy. That's a completely reasonable way to snack. On a side note, may I just give everyone a reality check on granola bars and protein bars? Most of them are highly processed and made with industrialized ingredients that don't serve us. If you want a pretty clean bar, try a cashew cookie Lara bar. It just has cashews and dates. That's it. By the way, Lara Bar does not sponsor this podcast, nor am I paid by them. It's just that there aren't a lot of bars out there that support weight loss. Read the ingredient list under the nutrition label. That's where you'll find out what you're eating. In fact, just for kicks, I decided to pull up the ingredient list for a Cliff Bar right now. A chocolate chip flavored Cliff Bar. Here are some of the highlights. Let me know if you have any of these ingredients in your kitchen. Tapioca syrup, brown rice syrup, cane syrup. All of these are sweeteners. There's also natural flavors, which we know are anything but natural. And there's an ingredient described as sunflower and or soybean oil. Do you know what this means? It means they find out which of the highly processed, industrially processed oils is the cheapest, and then that's the one they use for the bar, which is revolting. It also contains soy protein isolate and barley malt extract, by the way. This isn't really food, folks. Most bars have become food-like products. Will it give you a rush of sugar to calm that hangry brain? Sure. There's plenty of added sugar in that bar, 16 grams, which is 4 teaspoons of sugar. But what are you going to be like when that sugar spike is followed by a spike in your insulin levels, and then the sugar plummets? Eek! That up and down spiky sugar fluctuation is definitely not good for our mood, nor is it good for our weight or our health. So yes, technically you could grab a bar to treat your hanger, but let's not make that the regular default unless it's truly a simple bar with only familiar real food ingredients. Keep some healthy options handy when possible. For example, I traveled last week and I brought a cashew cookie Lara bar, the one with 2 ingredients, and I brought a few cutie tangerines. Those are so easy to peel. That way, if my flight was delayed, I wouldn't add hunger or hanger to my frustration. To circle back to snacking, it's fine to grab a snack when you're in an unusual situation and you won't have time to eat for a while. But don't fall prey to the habit of snacking to avoid ever feeling hungry. It's okay to get familiar with hunger. A little mild hunger won't hurt us. And in fact, it's what drives us to be ready for our next meal. We want to be a little bit hungry when it's time to eat, right? What we don't want to be is over the top famished, especially if we've had a rough day. When we get overly hungry, like 10 out of 10 hungry by dinner time because we didn't eat all day, our brain gets confused. Hunger is our cue that it's time to eat, but when we're overly hungry, we can take that cue to mean it's time to eat and eat and eat and eat and to do so as quickly as possible. Again, the first step toward calming down the tendency to eat too much too quickly when you're hungry or hangry is to catch yourself and raise your awareness of what's going on. Personally, I like to gently tease myself. Not to be a mean girl, but just some gentle teasing if I can catch my behavior in the moment. Like, whoa, girl, slow it down. You're just hungry, not in a hot dog eating contest. That will typically diffuse any ferocious eating and let me slow down the pace. But it takes a lot of practice and awareness to catch that moment before devouring all the food. I'd like to take some time to talk about the frustration piece of getting hangry. Today, we focus mainly on the hunger aspect, the dropping glucose levels that throw us into fight or flight and reduce our ability to make smart decisions. But another angle to consider is how to deal with the stress and frustration in the first place. If we can wrangle that, then we're left with regular run-of-the-mill hunger, which is a lot more manageable, not to mention more tolerable for those around us. We'll talk about stress management in an upcoming episode. For now, let's figure out your NBA for this week, your next best action. Perhaps you'll try raising your awareness around those hangry moments. If you've caught yourself being less patient, more irritable, or lashing out, could it be that you're skipping meals? You can solve for that. Might it be possible to keep some healthy snacks with you? Little baggies of nuts, a piece of fruit, a Larabar. Or maybe you'll commit to processing what happened the next time you're hangry so you can avoid snipping at your kids or your spouse. Before you go, I just want to remind you that it's time to book your super fun, super educational, super relaxing women's wellness retreat weekend with us at the smartweightlosscoaching.com website. November might seem far away, but spots are filling up and we don't want you to miss out. Grab your BFF, grab your favorite colleague, grab your girlfriends. This weekend will be a perfect blend of self-care, self-help, pampering, learning, and connecting. Our speaker lineup is fabulous. You won't want to miss it. Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like more support during your smart weight loss journey, check out our group coaching program at smartweightlosscoaching.com. Until next time, stay well and stay smart.